We're here high in the Andes, Machu Picchu. Actually, we're not. We're just in Big Bear. But it's a good day to be here because the temperature on the V-Strom set 106 down at the bottom of the mountain in Redlands or wherever we were. And up here, it's nice and cool in the 70s. We just got here this morning. We got 3 bikes. At first glance, you'd think they're kind of disparate. They don't really go together, but as it turns out, they actually do. They're all about 13,000 bucks. They're all kind of mild adventure bikes. They all have 19 front, 17-inch rear tires on them. So they're kind of adventure in slightly different ways, but they're more street biased adventure bikes. The 3-way 13K adventure 3-way. The 13K 3-way Softcore adventure 3-way is what we're calling this.
13K Softcore ADV 3-way.
Softcore 13K 3-way adventure shootout Comparo. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to ride them around a little bit more, and we'll find out some more. So far, I really like the Suzuki. The Suzuki's kind of a high-end Suzuki. The others are trying to keep the price down. The Ducati Multistrada 950 is their down market version of their Multistrada 1200, which was a fantastic motorcycle. I think we can all agree on that. And the nineT Urban, BMW was so successful with the nineT, they tell us, that they made like 5 different versions of it. And the Urban harkens back to the original R80 GS of approximately 1984 that had that same paint scheme. I don't know if you can see the red seat from here, but that's what it looks like. It's got the high fender, so it looks kind of adventure-y. We're gonna ride around, we're gonna decide which one we like best and why, and we'll conclude later. The end of day 2 of our, what are we calling it?
This, John, is the 13K Softcore ADV 3-way.
3-way, because we got 3 motorcycles. They're kind of softcore ADV bikes.
3-way.
Not softcore, but more street oriented. A little more street oriented. We rode them on some really good roads. We just came through a rain burst. A cloud burst actually got pretty wet, so we rode them in some wet conditions. Rode them on some dry pavement. Came over a pretty good little rocky dirt section of about 10 miles back there. What did you think? You're the off-road guy.
I thought all the bikes acquitted themselves well on that. It was kind of technical. There was a lot of rocks. There were some washouts that were a little gnarly, swallowed up some of the suspension, but overall they all handled it pretty well.
They've got very street-oriented tires on them, and the suspensions they're set up for street use. So they're perfectly fine on a graded dirt road. This was a rocky fire road that we were on, and it was not in great condition. And that's about as far as you really want to go with these things. But it was fun. I think the Suzuki was probably the most comfortable on that road. It had the most compliance and suspension, but it also had the surgiest motor. So that made it a little less friendly at low speed on that road. But at medium speeds, the Suzuki was really nice. What about the BMW? Anybody got an opinion on that?
Oh, I think it's by far the most tractable one here off the bottom. I mean, it's got a lot of flywheel, and it just hooks up. Even with we put that slippery tire on the back of it. That's slick. It's not a slick, but street tire. I didn't have any trouble, finding traction out in the dirt, and on the street, I think it's great up to 80 miles an hour. I do feel like it's not really. I mean, it's. These 2 bikes here, these other 2 bikes, and pretty much every other bike in the category owes its existence to the original version of that bike, which is the R80 GS. But honestly, I don't want to go back there.
No, that's the thing with the nineT was kind of a hipster roadster, and it was so popular they started making other versions of it. John alluded to that in the opening. But the GS version is a throwback to that original R80 GS from 1980. And it's a lot more rip snorting than they used to be. It's got a lot more power than they used to. But because they stuck with short travel on this, if you look at it, it looks just like an 80s GS as far as the suspension goes. And it's a little stiff and bumpy off-road. If we compared a real BMW R1200 GS with this, it'd be no comparison. Our 1200 GS would feel like a magic carpet on that same road compared to that.
No, but I kind of was surprised by how well it worked. I thought it's only a styling exercise, but it actually did okay, even though it's shorter travel. If you're a shorter person, the advantage of that is the seat's a little closer to the ground, and when the rocks get bigger, you just go a little bit slower on it, but you pick your way on through, and it actually did fine.
And then you ride it around town or take it to the store from your house or whatever, and you see what it's all made for. I mean, there's a reason they put urban in its name. It is the perfect like inner city bike, just ride around. It's real quick off the bottom. It sounds awesome at like low speed, just riding around. It's got a ton of character, and it's a tiny bike. You get on it and it just disappears in front of you. You've got just a little speedometer, just a little fly screen, and it's a light and airy, cool, funky sort of bike to just ride around. Once you stretch it out onto the freeway, as we learned riding up here, and as we've learned in our time with it over the last couple of months, on the freeway, it's a little short geared, and also being strictly oil cooled, it starts to run a little hot on a hot day going uphill. We saw an indicated 293 Fahrenheit for the oil temp on the way up here, and it does seem to lose some performance as it gets real hot. I don't know if that's the computer just for a safety net starting to retard timing or something like that, but the BMW, as an open road bike, if you're talking about long distances at sustained 70 mile per hour plus speeds, BMW is a little buzzy. It's just a little. It's meant for urban. That's why the urban's in the name.
But now let's talk about the Ducati, because you mentioned heat.
Sport bike. It's a sport bike.
But you mentioned heat. You mentioned the temperature that thing was showing you on the gauge. If there's one thing that drove me absolutely crazy about the Ducati the whole time we've been riding it, is just how much heat it puts onto the rider's legs.
Sure. So I was talking about internal engine temperature on the BMW, but the BMW, even when it's melting down, does not make the rider hot in any way. Like it's great because there's no radiator fan. It's not blowing hot air. So yeah, I think the difference is the Ducati keeps its power and runs nice and cool. It's perfectly happy to run high speed up the side of a mountain, but it dumps a ton of air on your lower legs. So you end up hot from the waist down.
You guys talking about the Ducati?
Yes, sir.
Because I was kind of surprised. I was crawling along a lot of times in first gear through some of the rocky parts, and I was kind of thinking I didn't really feel that much heat coming onto me.
But up on that trail we were at about 7,400 feet. Yeah, and it was a nice cool day.
Yeah, it was a cool day. I felt a little heat, but it wasn't oppressively hot, so I thought it did.
And you were still going, 10 to 20 miles an hour the whole time, so you had a 10 to 20 mile per hour breeze.
I was impressed by its ability. You and Scott were going a little quicker than me. I was being a little bit more cautious because there's a lot of big rocks. But I had the thing in first gear a lot, and I could do 15 and 16 miles an hour, and it was 2,000 or 3,000 RPM. It was just crawling along like a mountain goat.
It's super
which
tractable.
Which is not a thing you'd expect from a small bore Ducati 950. It's 937 cc, but yeah, it's very tractable down low. I think spinning as free as it does on top.
I didn't notice it at first, but Scott, being a more experienced off-road guy, he pointed it out to me, and then it became very clear. The Ducati's single biggest advantage off-road over the Suzuki is just how tractable that motor is down low. It's very, very, it's just not spiky. It's super usable. The Suzuki isn't unusable. It's not hard to ride off-road, and it has easily the most natural feeling steering and clutch, and like you get on the Suzuki, it just feels like a plain old motorcycle, and it's comfortable over those rocks because it doesn't chatter your teeth out. But it comes off the bottom quickly and abruptly, but you get it on the street. You're sitting at a stoplight or something like that, and the Suzuki's magic. The Suzuki just squirts through that intersection
effortlessly. That's what's been cool about this bike. From the get-go, they retuned it so maximum torque is like 3,100 RPM or something, I think. So you barely have to wind it up, and it's kind of all over by like 8,000, but you don't care because it's so. And that seems like it works pretty good off-road to me to have that little bump of torque. It's got traction control too.
Yeah, it does. For me, in a word,
I really like the Suzuki.
Off-road, the Suzuki suspension. It owned these other two bikes in the suspension. It might feel a little bit soft and a little bit loose, maybe when you're riding it, but like you said, it's more of a magic carpet feel. It isn't like it's uncontrolled. It's just it's cushy, it's plush. But you get it in the dirt, and it does its job. It really holds up both ends. It can pound through some pretty decent rocks for what these tires and wheels can handle. The suspension's got it covered.
Yeah, of the three, the Suzuki is the only one that doesn't make your kidneys tired riding on a rocky road.
Yeah. Seat's still nice and plush.
I like the riding position of the Suzuki a lot as well. You know, the BMW, I think, Sean, you mentioned that the padding in that seat starts to go away, you know, eventually.
Quick,
and
yeah.
once it does, you're done.
Yeah,
This one for me, the Ducati, you sit in it too much, you know, a little bit too, and yet it still feels wide through the middle to me, whereas the Suzuki feels narrower. So, you know, ergonomically speaking, I really like the Suzuki a lot as well.
Yeah, I think the Suzuki's
BMW,
the most comfortable.
That low handlebar is not helping you out much when you have to stand up either. If you're going to do off-road, you have to get a higher handlebar. But
Yeah, well, and the pegs seem awful high on the GS. You get off, hopping from one of these onto the GS off-road, all of a sudden you feel like it's not quite as bad as the street, whatever that street, the Harley-Davidson thing that we just rode with the crazy foot peg position. Yeah, the street rod.
Yeah.
That had a crazy, but this has shades of that. Like you feel like you're picking your feet up and putting them like this off-road, which is weird. But back to comfort, I think, yeah, that V-Strom's got comfort on the street. It's got comfort off-road. It's got real good real-world engine performance. Like it seems to be the very happiest cruising along at 80 to 90 all day long. It's no vibration. It's got nice 90-degree V-twin. It's got perfect primary balance.
kind of the only thing
great.
it doesn't have for off-road, maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. The Ducati's got different ride modes, so you can put it in enduro and it adjusts the ABS. You can lock up the back, and you can't turn off the ABS on that one, but if you're not doing on real steep stuff, does it matter?
I didn't think it was as intrusive as the ABS on the other two bikes
they've
anyway.
retuned it a little better, and
Yeah.
that's one of the big changes for 18. They upgraded the brakes, and it's got lean sensitive ABS on it now too, which I'm always afraid to try. But you can give that we've got some curves to go through to get home on the way down the mountain.
I'll get right on that.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, the interesting thing is you're right. There's the brakes. Normally on an off-road bike, you want to turn off the ABS. You want to make sure there's no connection between the front and the rear, that they're completely independent, and that they do exactly what you ask them to at all times with no filter, right? But this is the Softcore ADV group, right? So these bikes, if you want to be backing something into a dirt, hairpin turn on a fire road crossed up, these aren't the bikes you should be buying anyway.
Shopping in the wrong aisle.
So I think that it is, we can ding it for not having clear, easy to control brakes or whatever, but we can't ding it very much because it's not the job.
For me, as much as I there are certain things that I think the Ducati does better than the other two. There are certain things even that the BMW I think might do just a little bit better than the other two. But when you put it all together and you're looking for the bike that kind of levels everything out and kind of hits all the high spots, it's the Suzuki. And it's funny because I was thinking about this when we were riding them too. New bike that's a return of a bike that they had from 80 to 87. That was what kind of started the whole adventure category. This bike's been around for 14, 15 years, and it's still going strong. I mean, it's still a great bike, and it proved it again today.
The recent upgrades for 18 really boosted it up.
It was a big
bit,
difference.
It was a big difference.
It's easily a huge improvement. I went from not liking it all to liking it a lot this year.
And the restyling, they made a step forward in the whole fit and finish and the overall looks of the thing too. So, it doesn't look cut rate.
It needs to be though, because this Suzuki is actually the most expensive bike in this test.
Wait, how can that be?
Well, it beats the BMW by $4. You're right, $12,995 to $12,999, and it beats the Ducati by $200, $12,999 to $12,799. So if you're looking for style and panache and street cred or whatever, buy the Ducati. Best overall motorcycle in the group, though, it's that V-Strom 1000 all day long.
And think about this: if you break something on either of those other two, and you have to go to your parts counter and buy the replacement part, which bike would you rather be on?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's important to note. There are some things though. It is not the best bike at everything. It's the best motorcycle, right?
It's really good at everything.
It's really good at everything.
Doesn't come up short anywhere.
But this is the best sport bike, and that is the best run around town on a cool-looking roadster bike, and we can't take that away from them. Up here, there's amazing roads up here in all around Big Bear, like a 60-mile radius. There's just great twisty S-turns all day long. And the Ducati's got this low center of gravity feeling when ridden in a sporting manner on pavement, it's just wonderful the way it goes back and forth across the top.
Yeah, it's a great sport bike. The engine sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of the smaller Ducati on the street. You get to rev it up that much more. You get to shift gears that much more.
When was the last time we had a very similar motorcycle shootout and the Ducati was the least expensive? I mean,
Yeah,
props
probably
to
never.
them.
Yeah.
That was the point
Yeah.
with the 950 is
Yeah.
make it accessible. And when a V-Strom is $200 more expensive, that's a big accomplishment,
Yeah.
especially considering this thing's got bags and
Yeah.
you know.
were saying how much you like the exhaust system, how integrated.
Yeah, look how clean and
It's
well-styled
a
the
beautiful-
exhaust
It's
is.
a beautiful motorcycle.
For me, there's just two things about the Ducati that I really don't like. One is the heat that gets channeled onto the rider's
I didn't
legs.
notice it that much.
We both did.
I noticed it a lot.
You
And
guys
then
are wrong.
the other thing, and this is a perennial gripe of mine, is that they insist on putting the turn signals up in the handguards.
Or they're going to get
On an
destroyed.
adventure bike, where the handguard is the first thing to hit the ground. On an adventure bike, if you should crash it.
This might be
if
the
you
first
break
time-
if you break the handguard, you're also replacing a turn signal.
Yeah, it's
I
not-
just think that's
which we
crazy.
did last. This is the first time we've gone off-road where I didn't have to break one of those, I think.
I
maybe.
think one of them came pre-broken
Props
on
to
this
me.
bike, didn't
Props
it?
to me. Now they just have a weird little joint at the end. Anyway, that's probably enough. You probably need to have a cold.
We never declare a winner in these things. We're declaring a winner in this one.
We
it's
are?
the V-Strom 1000.
Okay, don't bother to read the story on Motorcycle.com.
No,
then.
stay right here on YouTube.
Don't even-
There's
don't-
going to be a great cat video up next.
Yeah, yeah,
The
you
V-Strom
don't have to read
1000
the
wins,
story.
and you don't really need to know anything else.
But if you want all the details and the specifications and all the beautiful photography, you could go to Motorcycle.com and read the whole thing. The end of the,
Words.
what's it called, 13K? Oh, never mind.
And thus concludes the 13K Softcore ADV three-way
that's why you're in charge. You can remember stuff like that.
and large.